So last time I had the pleasure of speaking with you, you were doing the book tour, but from what I gather, not much of a book tour, some travel restrictions, you know?
Yeah, I mean, COVID definitely put a bit of a damper on the ability to go into bookstores and do signings and whatnot. But we were able to do shows around it and get the word out there and yeah, and then come back in time to start writing the record.
Now, when was the book finished versus Tilt at the Wind No More, the new record?
My sense of time during COVID is obviously really warped. I think I want to say, I mean, I started the book in March or April of 2020 and probably finished around that same time in 2021. We went and toured it in that fall with the release in October, and then I kind of came back at the end of 21 and started kind of pulling the songs together that would end up being on this record. And I was writing over that summer between the book being finished and the book coming out. And then, at the beginning of 22 was when I got in the studio with Tommy and with Jeremy and really started kind of stitching together all the music that had been collected over, a number of years.
Yeah, when you put out a book like that, it couldn't be any more personal. A lot of times an artist, when they do the most personal project, the next thing that they do is the most impersonal, fun thing. How does that stack up for you in this case?
I think I probably did the opposite. I feel like what the book did for me was it sort of opened the Pandora's box of like deep memory, right? I was pulling from things as far back as childhood that I hadn't really put my energy into. And I think the book really made it possible to do that. But it also helped, I think, reconcile and tie up a lot of loose threads from various, iterations and eras of my life. And so when I came into sort of curating some of the songs that had already been written for the record, writing new words and then also writing post the memoir being finished, it made it possible, I think, to be deeply personal about the concept of memory, but in a way that was, I want to say, just sort of free of the judgment I might have attached to it in different stages of my life. I think because I had made peace with a lot of those memories, it made it possible to write an album that really is sort of rooted in nostalgia and rooted in this idea of memory as it relates to pushing yourself forward, right? Like not so much living in the memory, but saying like, yes, this is who these are the events that made me who I am, but who am I now? And how do I move forward into the future and become, who I'm supposed to be? And I think that's really a lot of what the record is. And a good deal of it was born out of the process of writing the book.
So I first became aware of you in the Something Corporate era. And then, of course, it was cool to see you grow into Jackson Mannequin, now the solo artist. I used to work with Mike Viola, who did one of your records with you. And you have these three artistic endeavors that are all successful, but under different names. Do you ever find, for example, where I'm going with this is you go to the record store and you want Cheap Trick and everything is in this CH Cheap Trick category, but your stuff is three different names. Do you find that some people aren't aware of the other chapters of your career?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something I've just had to continuously make peace with over the course of my career, because I've chosen that. It was never like a thing that I set out to do. I think the times when I've sort of shifted into other projects and adapted to other names have really been born out of sort of my personal life more. Sometimes my professional life is a part of that information, but it's really about a need for change and a need to be sort of reborn in some form or another. And I think what I've found and I'm proud of is, even though that there may be some effect of limitation in that, right? Like you don't always get the collective weight of everything you've done pushing on what you're doing next when you choose to sort of reimagine your world. But I think it's allowed me be a person that, for those who know me and know my music, they sort of celebrate the versatility and celebrate the fact that I'm willing to change. And it really is such an inherent part of why I create is sort of this process of regeneration and this process of growth. That to the extent that it limits my career, I think it also at least helps to position me as somebody who is not afraid, or even if I am afraid of change, I can't help but do it, and I'm okay with that.
So for you, the songwriting is not the hard part. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh no, the songwriting is the songwriting can be the hard part. Look, when the songs that you hear don't tend to be the hardest ones, right? I think really it's about finding my voice within each project and within each record, and because I use the music as a sort of a mirror to my life experience, certainly living it is the I don't want to say the hardest part, but that's the real work, right? It is trying to grow personally and professionally, and as a father and a husband and a friend, and then when it starts clicking and I start being able to see where I'm at, that's when the songs start coming, right? And that's when it becomes easier to write, and when it becomes fun to be in the studio. But sometimes the hatching of the music can be difficult because it's also because I'm trying to find out where I am, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Now, the aforementioned name-checkable Mike Viola, an artist that he worked with besides you, not you, this is not about you. He was telling me that person couldn't write happy songs. They were happy in their life and they were trying to write happy stuff. And it's like, you need to do sad stuff. Does that ever happen for you where you go, I feel really good, but no one wants to hear this from me?
I don't really ever write thinking about what somebody else is going to think of it, right? It's not, I think when you make records and when you produce records, at some point occasionally that starts factoring in, whether it's like, oh well, this is what I'm listening to, so I want to build some of these sounds into it, or this is where I want to see music going, so you start realizing as you make a record in the studio that there if it's good, it's something people want to listen to. So I think maybe sometimes that can come into play. For me, when I sit down at the piano, 9 times out of 10, it's like an act of like art therapy, right? There's something that's driving me to want to say something. I don't always know what that is until the words come out, but and I think over, after having done this for 20 years, you realize that sometimes the saddest songs that you write end up coming out, if you do the production well. Sometimes those songs you can bury a heavy message inside of an uplifting track, right? And so I tend to not worry so much about whether it sounds happy or sad or what's being communicated, knowing that by the time the song is finished, however it presents itself in the speakers could offset whatever the emotionality is of that moment with a certain kind of production or a rhythm that elevates it.
Well, 2 quick questions and then I'm going to let you go. And the first one is, what was the common ground that brought you and Tommy Lee together as friends?
Well, so Tommy and I shared a manager at the time, a guy named Carl Stubner.
Who also worked at Fleetwood Mac, and of
course, and Carl had given Tommy a copy of Something Corporate's North album, and Tommy, like, I'd heard rumors in the office that like Tommy was like really into the album, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then one day I get a phone call from Tommy Lee, and he was working on an album of his called The Ride, which was like a solo project. And he called me and he's like, bro, just imagine you like in every.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of interviewing him. What you see is what you get.
Yeah. And he said to me, you wrote this song called Me and the Moon that has become just one of my favorite songs. And I'm working on a song that I've written for a friend who had been going through a tough time. And I'm having a hard time finishing it. Would you consider coming up to the studio today and work with me? And I was just like, I was in the studio already working on Everything in Transit at that point, and I was like, you guys, I got to go. And I hung up the phone and burned up to Nichols Canyon and met Tommy and his producer. And I hadn't really done a lot of writing with people in a room at that point. So I listened to the song. I really loved the song. It was called Hello Again. Or I don't think it was called that at that point, I think, but either way. And I said, can I take this home with me and sit with it? And so I worked on it over the weekend. I came up with verses for the chorus that he had written that I was really psyched on. And it began this really beautiful thing where he and I, over the course of several months, I was working on his record. He was playing drums on my record. And then ultimately when I got sick, he was really a good friend to me when I was sick and ended up narrating the documentary. And yeah, I mean, he's just he's a person I probably connect with maybe once every year now, or run into at a festival or whatever. But the bond with him is deep because it was born in this
it's
really
music.
Yeah, and there was this beautiful moment, I think, for both of us where we were sort of exploring these other sides of ourselves and spent a lot of time together. And yeah, I'll always be grateful for Tommy and his friendship.
The quick follow-up before I let you go.
Yeah.
When did you learn how to play Home Sweet Home on the piano?
Oh, God. I mean, probably before I even knew how to play Home Sweet Home. It's been a while. I booted up for you behind me, but I'd embarrassed myself. But yeah, I mean, I think when that came out, I was an MTV kid, in the late 80s and was just starting to tinker with the piano. And that was certainly one of the first things you learn as a kid who loves hair metal in the late 80s, for sure.
Paltrocast.